what would be the total cost you would project for the fix, as well as then repairing the streets to what Oxnard standards are?
Right now, we're at approximately $150,000, and I'm estimating that we're probably, when it's all done, it's going to be in the range of $300,000.
Okay. And then secondly, PHWA is providing us all our water for a period of time from when it broke in July to just recently. Can they do that? I mean, we did that, of course, but do they have then the opportunity to really push water through for us, even though our normal take is about 20% of the mix each month?
Yes,
how does that work out?
We were able to take all Cayuga's water, and if you remember from the past operational reports, we haven't been taking our full 20% allocation of Cayuga's water. We've been running probably closer to only 10%. So yes, we ran full, and you'll see it in the ops report that for 9 days in July, we were running fully on Cayuga's, and for the entire month of August, we were running totally on Cayuga's. So, we were able to supply all the water from Cayuga's to the city.
Okay. And then when was the final date that the state had said we're okay with the water? Because I know you had to send samples into them.
I don't recall the exact date. It was I think it was one of the last days in August. I'd have to double check.
Oh, okay. All right.
It may have been might have been the 1st of September, but it was right around August 31st.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
We'll go to Vice Chair Rollins is next on my screen.
Being that we have an old water system, is there any way to predict any potential breaks in the future, or do we just wait and hope they don't happen too soon? And then are there other lines that are done in this kind of 90-degree engineering that are suspect of going at one point in time, assuming that they're all old?
Well, this line is not that old. This line, that's why, as I said, the product is called a C900, and the colloquial name for it was Blue Brute because it's a blue colored, and it's a very robust product. So the weak link was a 90-degree angle and the use of mechanical restraints versus the traditional thrust block. Now, the mechanical restraints were approved by the American Water Works Association as an alternate. However, they're not as robust in securing a 90-degree bend, and especially when you have a large diameter, high volume, high pressure line, when you're talking about 80, 90 PSI in pressure with a large volume, a concrete thrust block, excuse me, it provides much more security. And that is why we slurried it. Basically, we covered it with sand, and then I buried it in slurry so that it would keep it constrained and add a measure of redundancy at a weak point.
Okay. You mentioned it probably cost us about $300,000. Where does that money come from?
We have $373,000 in reserve for PHWA. Now, every member would be charged a pro rata share based on our water usage, our water allocation. Obviously, the city of Port Hueneme takes the lion's share of the water, so the city of Port Hueneme Enterprise Fund would be taking the lion's share of the repair costs, but it would be appropriated, according to our take. That is one of the things, my major concern was one, securing our distribution, that 24-inch line, making sure we could get that 18-inch supply line back in line as soon as possible. And now I'm going to have a little more time to work with our finance people and, start. We had money available to pay this, but now we have to do the accounting and the distribution. I'll be working with Mr. Martinez, and I want to thank Pete Martinez. It's a good partnership. His team was available if I needed them. They were there, and I appreciate having working with Pete. It's a good team. So yeah, I've got to work with Mr. Ken McDonald, our finance director, and start now looking at how we're going to allocate these costs. And I will be coming back to the board probably in November, certainly by December, with a full accounting of the breakdown of the costs for each member.
And one more thing, which might be a minor expense. I know we use Colegas water for that period of time. Is that included in the $300,000? Because I know we spend a whole lot more for Colegas water.
No, I did some rough calculations. We spent for the month of August $524,000, and that was all Colegas water. Normally, we take 80% United and 20% Colegas. So we normally would have spent about $155,000 on United and $105,000 on Colegas. So the extra amount, the extra cost, because we took all Colegas state water, was approximately $260,000 more, because we were running. Obviously the state water is much more. We pay approximately $541 an acre foot for United water, and we pay approximately $1,470 an acre foot for Colegas water. So you can see there is a significant cost difference when we have to run all Colegas water. So my priority was to make sure everybody had water and that 24 line was secured, and then to get that line, the 18-inch line, back in service as soon as possible. And
so does that come from a different fund? I know, like we changed the water rates a while back, or updated them. Will this be able to cover for it? I mean, do we have reserves in that part of it to cover that part pretty good?
I have to speak to Ken McDonald. The invoice obviously will be paid. So the city water enterprise fund right now, because we had delayed capital projects, and now that we do have the new water rates, we have a healthy reserve to move forward with our water master plan, and there is sufficient money in there to front the money for this, and then you go back and allocate proportionally to the members of PHWA. So we're financially sound. I just have to work out all the details with our accounting department.
Well, again, thanks to you and your team for doing a great job and in a tough situation.
Thank you. I'm very proud of the team I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to Director Marcus.
Thanks for all the good questions from the board members so far. You've answered most of my questions. I'm just thinking of the future. Looks as if there's a lot of dangerous lines in there, and I don't know, and maybe Jared would have an answer to this as well, because he was there in the room when this was installed. Would there be other, and I think somebody asked this, but I don't know if we got an answer. Is there any way to know if there are other mechanical right angle lines that could cause a similar problem, especially in areas where we have so many other utility lines that are at risk?
We have quote as-built plans, and we have found that unfortunately the as-built plans are not truly as-built, but they're the best we have. We're going to be spending time, one of my priorities obviously is to maintain our water system, and that's a high priority. Even after we hire a water manager, I'm going to be heavily involved with that, and working with Mr. Martinez also to ensure that we have water to the Navy base, the Channel Islands Beach District, and of course the city. we're going to take a look at our record drawings and identify potential problem areas, and we'll be taking a look at that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And Jaron, do you want to comment on that? Do you recall any of this?
Well, so first of all, Marcia, I'm not that old. I wasn't there when it was installed.
You were a young boy when you started with us. I know that.
I guess I wanted to start by complimenting Mr. Villafana on their response, and these things as they come at you are difficult at times to assess and evaluate on the fly, and it sounds like he had a good plan for prioritization. I'm going to make some general comments because I don't, and if the rest of the board doesn't like them, that's okay. Please speak up. I'm always open to that. Judging from the photographs, I think given the cost of this repair, I think we need to be diligent in evaluating. I know it's tough when a contractor shows up on a job site under emergency conditions, but they have same obligations that the rest of us do before they start excavating, sticking tractors in the ground. And based on 30 years plus of experience, it's clear that the Edison pipeline, the Edison lines that were broke were done as a result of an excavator. Just looking at the photographs, the way it was bent, that was not a part of the pipeline. So to the extent that we have, or the break, to the extent that we have the ability to do any cost recovery or cost mitigation on this project, I would encourage us to look at that. Mr. Villafana, I'm not asking for a response. I know this is your job to deal with those things, but that was pretty clear of what happened there. There may be mitigating circumstances. To the questions that I heard, I think 3 board members talk about in the way of 90-degree angles, that is common pipeline design. Mr. Villafana, I think, answered it correctly, and I feel very confident in his response that yes, mechanical joints are not as robust as the others. With regard to the budget situation and the cost of Cayugas water, I think Mr. Villafana will bring us back a good report. And it's not uncommon through the operation of this plant, at least in my experience in being part of this, for that plant to be down for 30, 45, 50, 60 days through a year, whether it be water quality issues, plant repairs, something going on. So I'm not overly concerned about the additional cost of water that we incurred during this time, as it's always a blended water cost that we put forward. And we have a true up process for all of us at the end of the year to reconcile if the agency doesn't meet its financial projections and there is a need, there's a true up process. So I think I mentioned that. I only say that in all due respect for the staff and the work that they have to do to not fret over telling us what the difference of 45 days of running on Cayugas today is versus the overall picture of the year and where we land at the end of the year. I think there's a few more important things that they have their time focused on today. So I say that in their support. And look forward to hearing from Mr. Villafana as he brings back a proposal for how we deal with this financially. The one thing I would leave my comments at, and if Mr. Villafana wants to respond, is looking at whatever cost mitigation we can. As you stated, generally a pipeline has, a minimum 50-year lifespan. I know there would be no cost recovery to the contractor for installation, the original contractor. However, if there were anomalies in the way that the system operated or some surge that occurred that we could pinpoint, there may be the ability for mitigation and sharing of some of the costs as a result of this to all of us, whether that be something that happened at the United end, that for some reason we saw a huge surge in pressure over and above what would have been expected. To the extent the contractor had an obligation to know where those pipelines were and expose them, first of all. And we ended up paying Edison money to put those conduits back in. I get under emergency situations, it may be difficult, but there are obligations on everybody's part to protect and preserve what's in place. So I would leave those comments there unless you want to respond, Mr. Villafana. I would completely welcome that.
Right. No, the Edison lines, they were broke. There was no contractor in the area working. There was no one working in the area. Those lines that you saw broken were a result of a tremendous surge in water and an erosion, and the gas line, everything there was caused by the water. There was no contractor working in the area that broke the Edison or did damage to the gas line. Those pieces of debris, they fell in as the water undermined the street. That all fell in. That was asphalt that fell in 8 feet down to where the lines were, causing the breaks in Edison conduit. That's what happened. It was debris that fell on it and broke them.
Oh, okay. I would love to talk to you offline. To me, seeing a perfect curvature in a set of conduit pulled in one direction, the hole had obviously been excavated and stuff removed from it. So at any rate, and there's scar marks on it.
We could talk online. We were very deliberate and surgical, and we had the crews out there from Edison and the gas company because we were very conscious of what we were doing. So yeah, certainly welcome a chance to meet with you offline and we can further discuss this.
I appreciate it. And like I said, I applaud your guys' efforts. I'm just looking for cost recovery and I wasn't the guy on the ground. So I appreciate everything you guys did and good job. So is there any comments from the board on this or Mr. Villafana that you would like to?
Again, I just want to give special credit to Charles Cable, my principal engineer, Hank Corcoran, my construction inspector, the contractor, J&H. I made a call. I was out there at 8 o'clock at night, and I made a call to the owner of J&H Construction, and she laughed. She said, "I knew it was not a social call, Don." And they responded within 25 minutes. They were out there. They came from Camarillo. So I want to make sure that the people also, Stephen Almkrantz, our engineering aide, he was out there. I had my whole team out there through the night, making sure that we could secure the area and get traffic back open in one direction, one lane in each direction, because Pleasant Valley is a major arterial and it feeds the base. So I want to make sure that those people were given credit. And David Birch, a consultant, also, I want to make sure. And again, Pete immediately offered his assistance, and he said if I needed anything from the Channel Islands Beach District, Pete was there and ready to assist me. So I want to thank Pete also for that willingness to participate and help out. And that's just evidence of a good partnership, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much again, and thank you for acknowledging your entire team, Mr. Villafana, and thanks for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else from any of the board members on that, this is just a receive and file, I believe. Yeah, we just received the presentation. I don't even think we need a motion, and we can move ahead to the next item here in the consent agenda, the minutes of the Water Agency regular meeting of July 20th, 2020, and also receive and file the finance register of disbursement for July 15th, 2020 through September 11th, 2020. If someone would like to make a motion to approve both of those items, or can pull them individually.
1, 2, and 3, yes.
Move to receive, I think. Move to,
Director Schnapp, did you make a motion to approve both items?
I did.
okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's a little frozen. Maybe it's my internet, so my apologies. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Director Rollins. Okay, and the clerk is asking for a roll call vote on this.
Member Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rollins,
Yes.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Marcus,
Aye.
and Chair Bouchard.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on, we are on to our business items. And again, we'll ask Public Works Director Don Villafana to provide us with a brackish water reclamation demonstration facility operational report.
Sir, your mic is muted. Don, your mic is muted.
All right, as I said, you've already gotten a snapshot of this, that on July 22nd, that evening, we had the water line break. So for the last 9 days of the month of July, we were taking all Callegas water. And for the entire month of August, we were taking Callegas water. So the plant was down those last 9 days of July and the whole month of August. And that our demand during the month of
Excuse me, Director Villafana, I'm really sorry to interrupt. If the board is okay with it, I'm going to ask to turn this over to Director Rollins for a few minutes. I have we just got done talking about water line leaks. I just got notified by my staff that we have a massive one in my place. I need to get people moving. So if I could come back in a couple minutes and let Director Rollins head the meeting until I'm returned.
Sure.
Good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
So continue on, Mr. Villafano.
all right, so we used 3.6 million gallons per day. That was the demand, which was more than in June. That was for the month of, and then last July, the plant was in operation. We used 3.5 million gallons per day. The silt, when we were in operation for most of the month of July, we had the silt density indexes were fine and the plant was in operation. And for that period, United supplied 52% of our water. And for the month of July, Callegas supplied 47. And the reason that is up is because the last 9 days, we were running exclusively on Callegas water. And again, then for the month of August, this report covers both July and August, we were 100% on Callegas water, and we used 3.6 million gallons per day, which was less than in July. And then, so the plant was down for the entire month of August, and we were all on United, on Callegas water. So that's all there is. Are there any questions?
Any questions from anybody? I just had one. How does that compare July and August the previous year? Like August, July to July?
Approximately the same. We were very close. The water usage was almost the same.
Okay. So is there a motion then to receive and file this report?
So moved.
Okay, moved by the mayor,
Director.
and second.
I thought I heard Sylvia or Director Munoz-Schnapp.
Yeah, okay.
Director Munoz-Schnapp, we've lost your video and audio.
Director Fernandez, I don't have a second.
I'll second. Sylvia, yeah.
So we have a second by Director Marcus. So we need a roll call vote for that?
Yes, sir. I'll go ahead and do it. We'll see if Director Munoz-Schnapp is able to participate in the vote. But
On.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Marcus,
Aye.
Member Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Chair Bouchard absent.
So we move on to number 4, Brackish Water Reclamation Demonstration Facility Operational Report.
Sir, we just finished that one. We'll move on to item number 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then number 5, update of the variance of request OPV allocation ordinance. Mr. Candy, consultant, will make that report.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, good evening, board members. Appreciate the opportunity to provide this update. The last time that I was in front of you on this matter was June 15th. And, I think to just kind of put all this in context, this whole allocation ordinance for the Oxnard Pleasant Valley Basins has been a continually evolving landscape with, changes in the way that the GMA is approaching the ordinance, as well as changes in the way that United looks at how they deal with their allocation under the ordinance. And all that filters down to, actions that are taken by the water agency to preserve and protect its allocation under the ordinance. So with that as context, I'll recap briefly where we're at on June 15th, and then, just as something of a spoiler, tell you that things have changed since then, and we had to go in a different direction than the direction that the board gave us on June 15th. On June 15th, we had heard from United that under this new OPV allocation ordinance, they had confirmed that their initial allocation, so this is the amount that they can pump without incurring surcharges, was little over 14,000 acre feet per year. And then when you figure in line loss and flush requirements, that number came out just under 14,000 at 13,906.46 acre feet. So that's the amount of water that could be pumped and delivered to the contractors. So then the next question was, well, how is that amount of water divided between the contractors on the OH pipeline? And United's approach at the time of the June 15th meeting was they were going to divide the allocation into sub-allocations based on contract percentages that were established by the 2002 amendments to the OH pipeline agreement. And PHWA had a contract percentage of 32.68%. That meant that PHWA would receive a sub-allocation of 32.68% of United's allocation, which meant at the end of the day, the water agency would be receiving and could receive without incurring surcharges 4,544.63 acre feet. And apologize to complicate you with the numbers, but all this is to say that this was a very beneficial and favorable allocation for a number of reasons, which we discussed during the June 15th meeting. And the board's determination at that time was, the question that they were faced with was, should the water agency be pursuing a variance request to try and increase its percentage share or its allocation? And the board decided at that time that it did not make sense to pursue a variance request because of the risk involved with potentially upsetting this very beneficial suballocation number that we were looking at the time. So that was the board's decision. That was the direction to us, to staff. And we were content with that for approximately a week until we heard from United that they intended to shift their approach to determining the contractor's suballocation, and that they were no longer going forward with this contract percentage approach, but rather intended to pursue what has been referred to as a past use approach. So instead of the contract percentage based on 2002 amendments to the wage pipeline agreement, they were going with what each contractor had been delivered over the 10-year base period established in the ordinance, taking an average of that. And in a nutshell, that nets out to PHWA as a reduction in its suballocation by roughly 600 acre feet or so. So with that news, we had to act pretty quickly and without direction from the board to move forward with a variance request. We felt that the benefits of not pursuing a variance request that previously existed no longer existed under this new approach to determining suballocations. So we felt it was, and time was short. The deadline to pursue a variance request was June 30th. And here we had about a week in order to get to work with United, and try to get something on file, if nothing else, as a placeholder to pursue a variance request and ultimately try to increase PHWA's suballocation under this allocation ordinance. So we went to work, and Mr. Villafana was very helpful with his staff in providing information and documentation that would support the variance request. United Water Conservation District was very supportive and helpful as well. And together with the help of those folks, we were able to get a variance request. Actually, United was able to get a variance request submitted on PHWA's behalf to increase our suballocation by 124.3 acre feet per year. That request has been submitted. It's still under review by Fox Canyon staff. We haven't heard yet whether the request has been approved. We have no reason to doubt that it won't be approved. We feel it was a very solid request. We could have asked for a higher request, although that would have potentially undermine the solidity of the basic request, what we actually needed to get. So we went with the lesser number that we knew that we could get, as opposed to trying to do a request for slightly more water that possibly wasn't as supportable. And that request was submitted prior to the deadline on June 30th. And again, it's under process. So that is effectively the update that I wanted to provide. I mean, the news is that, whereas where we're at before on this, the decision was made not to pursue a variance request because of circumstances that came up. We felt it was important that we get the variance request on file. If the variance request is approved by Fox Canyon, and again, there's no reason to doubt that it won't be, we're looking at a initial suballocation number of 4,076.3 acre feet per year. I understand that Fox Canyon did meet on September 11th. They intend to move forward with implementation of their allocation ordinance. However, they have the board has instructed staff to grant all parties relief from any surcharges in the first year. So basically what this is an effort to, while the ordinance is being implemented, it's an effort to minimize the impact of the ordinance that otherwise might be felt, and basically put the ordinance in abeyance while a couple different processes work themselves out. Most importantly, this facilitation process that now is going on in order to avoid a full-blown adjudication of the basin. Fox Canyon's interested in seeing whether or not the parties can get together and agree on an approach and possible changes to an allocation ordinance that would alleviate the need to adjudicate the basin. And so that was one motivation for them granting relief from any surcharges that might be incurred under the new ordinance. The other was to allow these variance requests to be processed. Apparently there was a number of variance requests. They're unsurprisingly complicated. And again, our variance request was submitted by the deadline on June 30th. We haven't heard one word as to whether or not we've even been processed yet, let alone a decision made. And Fox Canyon needs time to process ours and all the other parties' variance requests that were submitted. So to bring you up to date as possible as I can, the allocation ordinance is going into effect as scheduled on October 1st. However, the teeth of the ordinance, if there is some relief to that. Folks are able to pump up to their prior year's allocation without incurring surcharges. And we can talk about that, and I can get more specific if you want, but this is all to provide some time to allow parties to work out a negotiated resolution of the issues and also variance requests. That's what we're looking at, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I covered a lot of territory.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your report. I'd like to move the charge of the meeting back to Chairman Bouchard, who is now with us.
Thank you guys for all giving me a moment there. So I guess we'll move ahead with questions, and I'll go with my normal process and looking at how the screen's tiled and just move across it. So Director Hernandez, do you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Candy, for your report. That was a kind of a difficult situation to deal with, I imagine. So in the end, what is the difference between the allocation that we thought we were going to receive versus what we are receiving now? What's the total allocational difference?
The allocation that we thought we were going to receive was 4,544 acre feet.
Okay.
And change. And the allocation that we are most likely to end up with, and that assumes that our variance request will be approved, will be 4,076 acre feet.
Okay.
And change.
So that's about approximately 400 or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the decision to move to the variance, I don't see a problem with that, but is there a policy in place for doing that? If the board is not in session and you have an emergency situation where you need to move on something, is there a policy or procedure in place?
I'm not aware of a policy or procedure. I did confer with Dawn Villafana and Pete Martinez, and I think the collective wisdom was, we need to get this in the board. Certainly, this is a fundamental change in circumstances from what, the prior week I had reported to the board. The board still had questions about whether it makes sense to pursue a variance request despite the beneficial numbers that we were seeing. There was some, back and forth on that, and just understanding, how that conversation went, and then knowing that, well, all of that is changed. Fundamentally, it seemed to make sense to move forward with the variance request, and we needed to start that process anyway. I wasn't aware of the ability to come back to the board but certainly, if there is a policy, that would have been good to know, like maybe an emergency session of the board, we could have done that.
Sorry, I'm going to mute myself because my phone's ringing. Thank you. No more questions for me. But I do agree with that decision. I think it was a good call on your part and Mr. Villafañez. Thank you.
Okay, just moving across my screen, I have Vice Chair Rollins.
Yeah, so I was just trying to play around with the figures. Basically, they dropped our allotment by about 10%, give or take. Was the 3,800 over the 10-year period, is that way too low? Is the 4,076 that we now will get, is that enough to be able to handle our water needs?
Well, my understanding of current demand is right about 3,400 acre feet, give or take. And so immediate needs, yes. Yes, that's sufficient water. The concern is over time, we're likely to see here within this next year a follow-along ordinance where Fox Canyon will adopt an approach to ramping the parties down in order to meet the safe yield numbers that they've set forth in their groundwater sustainability plans for these basins. And that's where the rub comes. And we haven't seen, don't know the methodology that Fox Canyon will employ, but there's likely to be cutbacks coming over the coming decades, and over time, PHWA's demand will increase while the water supply availability will decrease.
The question is, why did they change the formula in such a short period of time? I mean, we had one, now we have another one, and I sense from what you're saying, sometime in the near future, we may even have another formula.
Well, unlikely. I believe that, I'm not entirely sure, but the motivation was the city of Oxnard, who looked at the numbers and also precedent that had been set with the way that United had divided suballocation, the approach that United took to determining contractor suballocation when emergency ordinance E was adopted. That was done on a past use approach where you take each contractor's average of deliveries over a 10-year base period. That was the approach, the most recent approach that United had employed. Also, slightly more complicated was the way that a lot of the calculations that led to United having this, I'll just call it, beneficial water supply numbers to divide. That a lot of that was because of what Oxnard was doing on the OH line during those years. And so the feeling was that it was a more equitable approach in terms of dividing up the contract allocation, the ordinance allocation or the initial allocation that United had, and not only more equitable, but also more recent precedent supported it. So that's the reason that United decided to go in that direction.
So did all of the agencies have to drop, or did Oxnard basically get what we lost?
No, I think there's a across the board reduction in the shift from the contract percentage approach to the past use approach. Oxnard gained, I think everybody else reduced.
Okay.
All right. Is that it, Director Rollins?
That's it.
Okay. Director Marcus.
No questions.
Director Schnapp.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bouchard. Thank you, Mr. Candy, for a comprehensive report here. I was always under the impression that the variance was going to be filed with the Fox Canyon Group versus United Water. That it was at the higher end variance versus distribution. Explain that. Let me understand.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out, so it's difficult to understand your question. I apologize. Could you repeat it?
I think I'm having some question.
Did anybody pick that up, or was it just me?
Director Schnapp, is there a chance it really is broken up? Is there a chance perhaps if it seemed like a fairly short question, if you put it through chat, maybe we can put it up and get it answered for you?
Sometimes
I'm really sorry, we're not picking up, but like every 10th word. Maybe if I could see a head nod, are you going to attempt to chat it? Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll wait just a minute to see if we can get that communique.
Oh.
Have you hit send already? Yeah, okay. We're waiting to see it come through. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Oh, he came in good now.
Yeah, maybe try your question again verbally, because you sounded pretty good right there.
Okay, so I was always under the impression that the variance that we were looking to request was always at the top level, at Fox Canyon level, not necessarily at the United Water. Change over time.
So I'm sorry.
It sounds like she's asking, oh, now my phone's ringing. It's my fax machine, I can't stop it. That she was asking that the variance was going to be submitted to, why is it being submitted to United Water versus Fox Canyon?
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm not sure if that's it, but.
Yeah, that was it. That was my question.
Okay, that's a good question. So United Water Conservation District holds the allocation for the contractors. That's was written into the ordinance. It's essentially been the way that it's been done over the years pursuant to the OH pipeline agreement, because United operates the facilities that pump the water. And that's how the ordinance is set up, that the operator that pumps the water gets the allocation. And so because of that, United holds the allocation, and the way the ordinance reads is United must be the party that submits the variance request to the GMA. And that's why we needed to work with United, not only on the numbers, because we had to show that essentially United pumped less over several years during the base period because of issues going on with PHWA, because PHWA suffered operational upset issues in several of the years during the base period. We had to show that United pumped less water to deliver, and then United put that package together of, their numbers, the information that we provided them, and then submitted it per the requirements of the ordinance as the operator to the GMA. So the variance will, if it's approved, will come back and increase United's allocation to pump at the El Rio well field, which supplies the OH pipeline, and that will then flow through ultimately to PHWA as additional water that then can serve PHWA's needs. Does that help?
Yeah, I also have one other question, is that we had projected that there would be, over the course of time, like 10 to 20% reduction in water each year. So effectively, it looks like maybe we're within the range of water usage that we've had historically, yet we have that 10% coming up right away in October. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, if I understood you correctly, we are, well within the range of where PHWA has been historically. The prior allocation that we were restricted to, if I can use that term, under Emergency Ordinance E, so this is before the new ordinance for the Oxnard Pleasant Valleys went into effect, that allocation was 3,531.55 acre feet. And PHWA lived under that allocation for a number of years. My understanding again, and maybe Mr. Villafana or Mr. Martinez can correct me, but the current demand is right around 3,400 acre feet per year. And the new allocation that we're looking at, and it's really, just to be precise, it's really sub-allocation. It's a sub-allocation of United's allocation. Our share is right around 3,952 acre feet. And then add to that the variance request, and we're above 4,000 acre feet. So yes, we're for the next several years, the agency is going to be fine. Again, the problem is likely to arise in future years, maybe a decade down the road, when the water restrictions start happening and these allocations get incrementally reduced so that everybody lives within the safe yield numbers of the groundwater sustainability plan.
If this is Don Villafana, if I may just add one point here, we're going to have to reduce United water, but we will always have plenty of water. It'll just be a matter of how much it's going to cost us, because there is the Callegas water, the state water that we could take to make up shortfall. Obviously, that's much higher cost, but there is adequate water supply. It's, of course, just a matter of the cost to the agency.
Thank you. Thanks for.
I'm going to go back. Are you done, Director Schnapp, with your questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back. I see Vice Chair Rollins is looking to ask a follow-up.
Yeah, being that this would be to Mr. Villafana, being that we always have the opportunity to use Callegas water, are they going to, also being that there's statewide goals to reduce water use in general, will they in turn be reducing their allotments to their customers the same way that United Water is going to have to do that? In other words, like, we can go over to Callegas. Is it just pushing it forward? Eventually, they're going to also have to reduce water allotments to their various different serving agencies.
At this time, I don't know, but there are many major water projects in the works that are statewide projects to bring more water from the Bay Area or from Northern California to the south. So at this time, I'm not aware of any reduction that's planned, but eventually, possibly there could be, depending on the drought condition and climate change. So there's always that potential, but right now there is sufficient water, I would say, certainly for the next 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, one more chance. If any other board members have any comments or questions, I'd like to acknowledge you first. Okay. Mr. Candy, I appreciate the report. A couple of things, I guess, in hearing the conversation, if anybody cares to hear my perspective. The ramp down is going to be significant, as Mr. Candy alluded to, and Mr. Villafana, for us going forward. And when you look at the current groundwater sustainability plan and the significant cuts that are required to achieve sustainability, given if we don't build another project in the Oxnard Plain or Pleasant Valley Basin areas, which are going to be all things lead to the fact that they will be co-managed basins or managed together collectively, the ramp down will be important to us. And just back of the napkin numbers, when you look at a potential somewhere around 40% reduction in pumping on the GSP with no new projects, and what that means to PHWA if our current demand somewhere around 3,400 acre feet, and you take that 40% number, it's close to somewhere around 1,400 acre feet of water. If you have an initial allocation of 4,000 acre feet, you're coming up short somewhere around 1,000 acre feet of water a year, just in groundwater available for current demand. And Mr. Villafana answered it correctly in that we do, which is a testament to the good work that our predecessors did before us in diversifying our portfolio and giving you opportunity. And I think I could probably get a head nod from Mr. Candy, being a water rights expert, that a diversified water portfolio is always good. And so I think how we evaluate it going forward will be important on all those things. I would like to ask, while this is a receive and file and there's no action to be taken today, but certainly I think we could probably provide direction if the rest of the board felt it meaningful, that there's a current Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency facilitation process that is moving forward. What the outcome of that is still remains to be seen. The hope is to avoid really costly adjudication or legal expenses. But at this point, there is what has been formed. There's a main core stakeholder group. There is a projects committee, and there is a legal committee. I hold Mr. Candy in very high regard in his ability to represent the agency, and whether or not we can't maybe provide direction to have a request made that Mr. Candy, and I know that Pete Martinez is already looking to engage that group, become at least part of it. There is a core group of people that are paying for it. It's very inexpensive right now. We're paying the different agencies are paying for the facilitator, the GMA sponsored facilitator. Her name is Gina Bartlett, to be part of that group. Everybody else is footing their own legal cost for their attorneys that are part of it. It's already met a few times, so any new members would be asked to, kind of respect where the conversation's at, rather than spending a lot of time going backwards, but catching up, and at least having our representative in Mr. Candy and Pete, I think could maybe take a little bit of load off from a staff level from Mr. Villafana if he's willing to engage that. But having some representation from the PHWA in there, I think would be very positive for multiple reasons. One is one of the charges that group is looking at is trying to craft a physical solution, meaning the crafting of, there's a lot of dissatisfied parties with the current FCGMA or Fox Canyon ordinance, and trying to come up with, and Peter, please, you'll correct me on all these terms. When I talk about the physical solution, meaning better than the GMA ordinance right now that has a lot of legal challenges coming forward, other things, really trying to craft a long-term ordinance, or potentially in the form of a friendly stipulated judgment that gives us all some reliability going forward as to our water rights, our investment in the basin. So I'd like to ask if maybe we could give direction for at least the request to be made for the PHWA representative to be included in that, and Mr. Candy, and then he can come back with what maybe for formal board action at our next meeting, if that's okay. But at least we give some direction for him to be in the next meeting to kind of get a feel for where it's at. And Peter, I would ask one other maybe question direct to the point in how you guys see the variance process today affecting the current OH agreement, as the OH agreement has capacity numbers versus delivery cost, and the way that they've shifted from a capacity breakup or contractual breakup of the water to the using the base period as that breakup, and you may need some time to look for that.
Yeah, thanks, Director Bouchard, appreciate it. So my thoughts on that last question are, one of the reasons why United has indicated, they're going with this past use approach is because there's precedent for it in the emergency ordinance E, and the way that was implemented among the contractors on the OH line. So because that was done past use, I think it's the same, and the simplicity of just moving from emergency ordinance E and the way that was dealt with into this ordinance, I think that is something that United is looking upon favorably. So my assumption is it's going to work the same way. But I haven't explored it beyond that. So if there's something, that I need to look at or go to United, with questions about, all right, so what does this look like in terms of capacity, cost, what are we looking at? I mean, I think that's a very easy task or ask, and I could get that information, I think, relatively quickly.
So if the rest of the board's, is the rest of the board comfortable providing just direction to ask? And Peter, I appreciate that response, and maybe we don't need to delve that deep into it till we figure out where it's at. But is the rest of the board comfortable with giving some direction to at least have Mr. Candy make the request to join the OPV facilitated legal committee?
Yes. Yes.
That would.
I know the Navy would really appreciate that as well. And just to add on to that, the Navy is sitting on the project review board. So that is another link to all of this regulation happening. So I am sitting on the project review board, which meets every other Thursday as of now. So I would encourage Peter Candy to be on the legal board for sure. Over.
Okay, so it looks like we're all okay with just providing that direction to make the request, and then we'll return with if Director, or excuse me, Mr. Villafana perhaps maybe coming back, or Christy placing it on the agenda for future board action to authorize future participation. But I think right now we're just giving direction for Mr. Candy to try and join that group and attend the 1 or 2 meetings before our next board meeting. Okay, so with that, I need to apologize to ex officio member Jacobson. I never called on you for your video went dark, and I was just looking at the video. So my sincere apologies. Is there something that you wanted to add to the rest of the meeting before we move on? I really apologize.
Hey, nothing but a chicken wing. No, I just wanted to thank PHWA for being such a good responder to the break and providing the Navy the water that they needed for their mission. This group and this agency has been standing next to the Navy for decades, and I do appreciate that. I also want to thank Peter Candy for standing up for us and being our voice in very difficult situations. So thank you all for that. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the update on the variance request, and my apologies for messing up the way this went down. So my apologies on that. So we have a recommendation just to receive and file the report, and staff was given direction. So do we have a motion to do that?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, so I have Director Schnapp moving and Director Marcus seconding.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 I think we need a roll call vote on that one.
Oh, my apologies.
Are we able to take an action on this or just give guidance?
We're not taking formal action. All we've done is give staff direction.
So do we need to take a formal vote, or?
Chris, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'll
Go ahead,
and do a
Christy.
roll call. Thank you, Chair. Member Munoz-Schnapp,
Yes.
Member Marcus,
Aye.
Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rollins,
Yes.
and Chair Bouchard.
Yes.
Items received and filed. Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to board member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. So we'll go with Director Hernandez first.
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Director Rollins,
No.
Director Marcus.
I would, if I may, would like to adjourn this meeting in honor and in memory of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think she is an inspiration, and I think the way this board works together and staff is an indication of how she inspired me, at least, and others. Thank you, and I'll be safe.
Director Schnapp.
Yes, I have one thing for a future agenda item, and it's item number 4 from our last board meeting. And it is the situation about the contract for membrane replacement to Kingley Technologies. Chair Bouchard, you had some questions regarding that last time, and I believe we still need to come back and figure out what actually did happen and what we could do. So I'd like to have that be on the agenda for next month.
Very good. I think that request will be there, and I think in all due respect to Mr. Villafana, I think he plans on returning after he brings back the financial report on the the water main break, as I understand, some of the funds that were set aside for that. So I think that would be included if I could speak for you, Mr. Villafana, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm going to give a report on a rundown on the costs in October, or certainly in November, because we will not be finished with the repair until sometime towards the end of October. And then we did get to do some work at the plant. We did do some work on the bags and other things. So realistically, that would probably be coming in the November meeting, or certainly the December meeting. But that will be on the calendar this year.
Very good, thank you.
Ex officio member Jacobson, finally.
Nothing for the group. I just want to thank everyone for their time and be safe.
Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, I don't have any further comments. I would like to respect Director Marcus's request, and that we adjourn this meeting in honor of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Thank you.
And if everybody's okay with that, we will adjourn the meeting now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.